when you have a brand new baby, that's kind of the thing your brain is obsessed with, of like, who are you going to be? Like, you just have this like newfound appreciation for wanting to play a role in developing this little bundle in front of you. And that's when I realized that, there really wasn't the things out there that I wanted for her to exist when she got to that age.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Classroom Matters with me, your host, Christy Houle. And I am super excited to be talking with someone today that is really going to put into perspective the age-old question that we always ask kids: what do you want to be when you grow up? So Holly Sharp is with us today, and she is an author, a career coach, and I believe an innovative thinker that helps kids discover career options and interests so that they can grow into happy adults. Along with this mission, she also works with parents to help them overcome the stress of finding the right hobbies and interests for their kids to help set them in the right direction. Holly also works with teachers in the area of approaching the career topic with greater purpose in the classroom. And her book, Dream It and Do It, presents kids with 100 different career and modern day role models. Holly, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here.
So we're going to dive right in. And I first want you to give our audience a little bit of background into, your journey to sort of get to this point of what it is that you're doing with helping kids find the answer to that question.
Absolutely. So I actually spent my career as an innovation specialist. So, I think a lot of people find themselves being an author for a various number of reasons, but I found my way here because I spent my life basically looking at industries from ice cream to bug killing to house cleaning, all sorts of juicing of different industries, where my brain is basically programmed to look at a marketplace and figure out what is it that people are missing. And when I was home right before the pandemic, I had recently been laid off and all the crazy things that happened in the world in the last year and a half, and was preparing for my baby shower. And my sister decided to do a book themed, I love books so much, a book themed baby shower where instead of a card, people were bringing books and signing the inside for my daughter. And so I started registering for books that I thought would be a nice addition to her library. Well, one of the things I feel like as new parents we love daydreaming about is who these little like bundles of joy are going to become. When they're that young, like literally every single thing is possible. And so I was really hunting for books that I could use to help have conversations with her about the career choices that were possible, especially in a modern day world. And I found a lot of really great books that's focused on very single careers, but not one that really helped paint a picture of all of the different careers that were out there. I'm a huge fan of Rebel Girls. And so I was looking for something kind of in that vein of, what are different short stories I can share with my daughter to help inspire her to become whoever it is that she's going to be. And when I couldn't find that book in the marketplace, I decided, since I'm home with my daughter and we're not going back to work given the condition of the world, why not write it myself? And so I had a really wonderful time learning about all of these different people. And my goal now is to take these stories and help teachers and parents use them to have conversations with their kids about what they want to be when they grow up.
Mm-hmm. So I think that is something that we all really need. And I know that you said you have a daughter, and she's still fairly young.
She is 1 year old, yes.
And so you are probably, like you said, you're thinking about it, but a lot of our audience, we're talking, parents that are listening, teachers that are listening, anyone that's listening that is touching or impacting a child's life, anywhere from the ages of 9 to adulthood. We are all, and myself included, we chatted about that a little bit before we started recording. I have 3 children that are in that, what are you going to do when you grow up phase of their life. And that is really the go-to question. That is what we ask them. It's just human nature to want to ask these little people, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do when you graduate high school? What do you want to do when you go to college? So in a lot of your in your book and in a lot of the things that you have out there that you're publishing and that you're working on, you say we need to stop asking kids that question And so I want you to talk a little bit about that question, why you think we do it, and why you think that we either need to stop or rearrange the way that we're going about it.
Yeah. So after deciding that this was a topic I wanted to write on, I did a lot of investigating research that had already been done on this topic, and a couple of things I realized was that there is a huge population of adults that are unhappy with their college choice or with the career that they're currently in. And looking at the research, a lot of the reason that people are dissatisfied, 2/3 of adults actually are dissatisfied with their current choice, is because they made this decision at such a young age and really weren't given the education necessary to really make a good choice for themselves. So I was actually thinking about it this morning when I was kind of getting ready and thinking about this podcast. And I've never really used this analogy before, but it's kind of like dating. Like, can you imagine if we said, okay, at 22, every single human being has to decide who they're going to marry. And then starting at like 12 years old, we're like, so who are you going to marry? Well, I just said Brad Pitt, right? Like,
Right.
so if you don't have, like, what an important decision we have to make. And we have to make it at a very young age and a very specific age. But if we had to figure out who we wanted to marry at 22, you can believe starting at 12 years old, we would be talking to our daughters about, here's what you want in a husband, here's what he should act like, here's all the attributes you want, here are your different choices. But somehow we have this decision to make at 18 years old, and we don't spend a lot of time as parents or in the education system really dedicating ourselves to this topic. And so while I think that, it really is an adorable question to ask, like, to be honest, I ask it of my nieces all the time. And frankly, the more that you ask it and the more kids see your adoring response, the more they feel committed to that choice because they don't want to disappoint the adults in their lives. And, if you think about the kids in your life, what's the last answer that they gave you in terms of what they want to be, and how likely are they to change that and not feel like they've disappointed you? So I don't have a problem with asking kids this question per se, but what I do believe the research shows is that if we're asking the question but then not providing them the assistance that they need to really make an educated choice, they're starting to commit to this career. I mean, frankly, as young as first or second grade, kids are starting to say, like, I want to be a pilot, I want to be a veterinarian. And then we start to choose activities that correspond with those types of choices, but we really haven't taken the time to go, here's all the things you actually could be. And this is where, like, the thing that I really believe the research shows more than anything else is that if you understand your child's career personality, so this is the same research that companies pay, or people pay a lot of money to career placement companies to get access to. If you understand what your career personality is, you're more likely to help your child, or if they understand what their personality is, help your child find the careers that fit within that personality and the activities that fit within that personality that make it more likely for them to grow up and find something that's a good fit for them. I think a great example is veterinarian. Like, I know so many children that have said, I want to be a veterinarian. But, like, how do you
Right.
feel about guts and gore? How do you feel about watching an animal suffer? How do you feel about having to be available 6 to 7 days a week so that you can be there for animals? And, if you want to own your own veterinary clinic, how available are you willing to be? And I think it's great that kids love animals because it's often what leads to vet. But are we having conversations with kids that want to be a vet about all that it means to become a veterinarian? And maybe they're actually a better fit based on their personality to be a marine biologist or a conservationist or a zoologist. There's a lot of other ways that you can make a great living working with animals that doesn't necessarily have to be a veterinarian. And so the thing I'm really advocating for right now in the classroom is for teachers to help parents identify their child's personality type and then find the careers and role models that match that personality type.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that I've provided materials that allow people to do that. But even if you're not using the Dream It and Do It system, that at least if your child knows that, or if a parent or teacher knows that a child tends to lean more towards an artistic personality, that actually means a lot in terms of the things that they process easily and well, and the things that they'll struggle with. A lot of the stories that I have in my book about people who went on to be very, very successful in the arts field, and that can be anything from, it doesn't have to be an artist, it can be a journalist, it can be lots of things that just have that artistic personality. They suffered a lot when it came to math and some of the more concrete subjects. If we have an understanding of what our kids are good at, I think it will help us to develop, like, it's okay that you're going to be good enough at math, but then know that where their personality excels, there's lots of really great careers for them to think about, and maybe not trying so hard to make them become an engineer when really maybe they would be a better writer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think too, with everything that you're talking about, and all the things that you just said are absolutely true. And we don't think about it from that perspective when we are talking with kids. And so a couple of things were coming to my mind as I was listening to all the information that you were sharing. And one of them is, do you think that sometimes we just, especially folks that are talking with children that aren't their own children, or, like you're asking your niece, or you're talking to the neighborhood kid or a kid in the hallway, sometimes I think we use that as an icebreaker. And, because that's like what you talk to kids about, especially in a school setting. It's sort of like your icebreaker question. You're like, oh, I don't really know what else to say. So I'm just going to say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then also in that same vein, do you think that sometimes our reaction to a child's answer to that question could veer them either more in that direction or less in that direction, unknowingly?
There's almost no one that has a greater influence on what children decide to become than their parents and teachers, truly. So I do 100% agree that our reaction to what kids say they want to be does make a huge difference. One of the things that I think about is how kids react to superheroes. And in some ways, a lot of the types of careers that kids tend to want to be have that same superhero worship. So, I went and did a career day at a inner city school a few weeks ago, and the hero worship was so great when it came to athletes and DJs and musicians. And one of the things that I hope that as teachers are listening to this, that we start teaching kids that there are other types of heroes in the world that kids can look up to. And so I tried really hard in the materials that I created to take jobs that may not seem all that exciting or sexy, and really show that you can have a huge impact on the world by being in logistics. You can have a huge impact on the world by being, like, Dave Ramsey is a great story in terms of being a money manager, and the people's lives that he's changed, and the way that taking something as simple as math and turning that love into basically making money for himself and for other people. And I hope that these stories help kids see that there are other heroes. Another great example is a roller coaster engineer. Like, there are other really cool things you can be that, you shouldn't not consider the arts and musics and athletics, but there are so many great things that are really fun and exciting that I hope kids can start to see heroes in other people, and not just the ones that are easy to expose kids to.
And I love that you just brought up that point, because it is so important that we are honest with people, especially when they get more into the end of high school years and the college years. I worked with hundreds of student teachers that would come into my school and would teach, and they thought they wanted to be a teacher. This was this glamorous, teaching's not necessarily glamorous, but it's people respect teachers, and teaching is an extremely valuable career, and it's like you're impacting children and all these things that they think it is, but they get in there and it's not what they thought it was going to be. And maybe they aren't the best with young kids or this, and it's, we would try to steer them in a position of, well, there's so many other great support positions in education that are just as important as being in front of the classroom. But it was really hard for them. A lot of these folks that were like, no, I have to be in the classroom. This is what but they weren't happy, but they weren't really wanting to veer course because it wasn't as looked upon as positively as the role that they had chosen. And so really just giving them that information of, like you're saying, look at all these other things that you could do that you would actually love, what you could be passionate about. You might not be in the limelight, might not be the person that everybody is looking at all the time, but you really are an integral part of society doing what you love. So I think that's really important.
And kids want to be what they see, right? I mean, one of
Mhm.
the reasons teacher is a common answer for kids is that's who they see
Mhm.
doing a job every single day, or what their parents do, or what they see in cartoons. And I think in the modern world, the reality is like computer programming is going to be a big deal for this generation, or engineering, or things, especially as developing countries become a more important part of our global society. Jobs that are going to remain in the US that we should be talking to our kids about, frankly, are not the ones that are being taught in the classroom. And so my hope is that whether it's through my curriculum or a different one, that kids are being exposed at a younger age to more modern day careers
Mhm.
that are really great options, but not necessarily ever spoken of. And I think one where it really hit me that what I was doing belonged not just as a story that kids could read with their parents at bedtime, but really belonged in the classroom was when I went to the Teachers Pay Teachers site and I paid to download every single piece of curriculum that was done for elementary school kids on the topic of careers, and 100% of them were clip art. And there's nothing wrong with teaching via clip art. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that it was very surface level. So it was neither deep nor wide. So most taught somewhere between 30 and 40 careers, and taught them this is Sally the chef and she cooks food. This is Freddie the farmer and he grows food. And frankly, I don't know that you're changing kids' minds with at that level, or that breadth. So my goal was to not only create something where kids could see a greater variety of careers, especially ones that matter in today's society, but also go more in depth. So actually introduce them to real role models that they can see themselves in, that were telling a true story. I mean, it's just like a movie, right? Like you can teach World War II, or you can watch a movie about World War II. One's going to stick with you more because it's told based on a story. And so that was my goal here, was to create stories about real people doing these jobs so that kids could see that every single person in that story started as a kid. And every single story in the series starts with what that person was like as a child, because I think it's really great to see that everyone started just as a normal kid doing normal things with normal interests, and figured out how to turn those interests into a thriving career.
Mhm.
And you don't have to have been born rich. You didn't have to have been born in a certain neighborhood, or gone to a certain school, or even frankly to a certain college. That with enough grit and uh, hard work and good ethics, that you could grow into a great person doing a great thing.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you have your curriculum, you have your resources, and we're going to dive into some of that stuff here in a second, because I want the folks listening to understand where they can get it, what it's going to do for them, what you offer, all of those things, because it's easy to listen to something like this. And I know that every teacher and parent that's listening right now, they're shaking their head and they're saying, yes, yes, yes. But the harder part is finding the resources, putting it into action, applying some of these techniques and strategies and theories inside the classroom, inside their home. So I really want to get into that here in a second. But there are so many resources out there, right? So you've got your stuff out there. You can get online and find things. And at Educate.Today, actually where we produce this podcast, it is all exactly what you're talking about. And so most of the folks listening are members, they know that, but it's primary source career exploration. You're talking to the meteorologist, behind the scenes. He's telling you about that. You're talking to the roller coaster engineers. It's funny that you brought that up, because we actually have those folks that are going through the day-to-day of their job and how they got there and why they love it. You're talking to the chefs, you're talking to the people that are doing the work every day.
That's awesome.
And so it's so connected. And I think you're right. The reason that educators and folks are coming up with these things is because we really need to gear our kids in the right direction based on what they want to do, less on what we envision for them. And, it's funny, my oldest son, a funny story, he has been on this path his whole life to being something that I was a little surprised by, because his grandfather had that job, and he always looked up to his grandfather, and he always said, "I want to be this, I want to be this, I want to be this." And I thought that's kind of weird because that doesn't really fit your personality, because he's very into gaming and coding and computers and taking things apart electronically. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this is bizarre because the career he's chosen has nothing to do with his passion in life. Well, just this last 6 months, he's completely changed and said, "You know what, Mom? I think I'm going to go into coding. I think I'm going to start doing some free courses on coding. So he'll be a senior next year." And I'm like, you think? But it took him some time, and the other profession was more glamorous and more this and more, widely known. And I'm like, finally, I think this really fits you. But you're right. We have to start guiding these kids in the right direction. So that's sort of a segue into the next piece that I really want to get out there to the folks that are listening. So you've got your curriculum, you've got your book. Talk to us a little bit about the 3-step process that you have. And I know you probably can't give it all to us because, we need to go out and get the resources, but the 3-step process for developing kids' career interests, and what can we expect out of the resources that you're supplying for us?
Sure. So I developed what I call the 3 E's. So the first step is to evaluate. And I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but I think, frankly, it's probably the part that's missing the most as we talk to our kids is just that evaluation. I think that the story of your son is perfect and, frankly, really, really common, that we kind of jump straight to, you could be this, you could be this, you could be this, you could be this. Well, if what makes, I think, it easier on teachers and parents is if you take that first step to just evaluate where your kids are at from a personality standpoint, I think it actually helps narrow pretty quickly what is the area in which your kids are most likely to find something interesting. And there's research that was done by a gentleman named John Holland. It's been used for decades by career placement firms. And these firms use this research to evaluate your primary and secondary personality type. And then they use that information to say, okay, within that, here's a list of careers that would actually be a great fit for you personality wise. And so, like, when I look back on my own career, I am a children's book author. I have been an innovator. I have started 2 of my own companies, and all of that seems a bit random when you just call them by job titles. But when I think about myself as being a pioneer artist, it actually makes perfect sense that those are the type of things that I find myself interested in doing, regardless of the industry that it's in. And so, as parents and teachers, I think the perfect first step to handle some of that overwhelmed feeling when you think about trying to approach this topic with your kids is to simply evaluate what their personality is. And I looked at a number of different tests that were done by career placement firms and translated that information into a quiz that you can get for free on my website. It's 15 questions. And it asks questions about what your kids are interested in today. So this is everything from the toys they play with to the activities that they do in their own personal time, what subjects they excel in school. And by answering those questions, it will give you their primary personality type. And then from there, you've already started to narrow the things that are probably the easiest and best for you to expose them to. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah, and
So
about what age would you say? Because I know we're talking a lot about, the quiz and all these great resources. What age, if people are listening saying, "I really want to get that, I want to start doing that with my children," what's age appropriate here?
So I have created these materials for elementary school. And as I've been working with various ages, second grade really seems to be the sweet spot where, you've kind of come out of the, I want to be a unicorn veterinarian, or like,
I
you've,
still think that would be a really fun job. I mean, let's just be honest.
to some reality of, okay, you can kind of process what different careers are,
Mhm.
that I'm not sure that a kindergarten would have the same appreciation for like what a programmer does.
Right.
But by 6th or 7th grade, you've started choosing a lot of the activities that you're doing with your free time. So that 2nd, 3rd grade is really a great sweet spot where you're starting to decide on what activities to choose for your kids. I think that it's a great time where kids still see adults as being role models that they can look up to. And so I love love the idea of late elementary being when parents and teachers can use this quiz. I mean, frankly, you can use it at any age. I think the questions I'm asking in my quiz are really elementary school appropriate, but the concept is the same. Like if it, again, the research was done by John Holland. And if you went and looked up the personality types, you can probably, without doing a quiz for older kids, look at it and go, oh yeah, this sounds a lot like my kid. But the quiz just makes it easy for parents to really answer a couple simple questions and learn more about these personality types. And that leads then to the second E, which is exposure. So once you kind of have an understanding of your child's personality type, I think finding role models that have similar personalities is a great way to expose kids to different career types and to people who made it happen for themselves. Because, some great careers, like being a judge is a great career, but like it's not an easy path to get there, right? So seeing what that person had to go through in order to become a judge, I think is important as well. And the ability for kids to see themselves in that person. If you think about anything, like even just like taking a Cosmo quiz, right? Anytime you see yourself in the answer, if kids are sitting in the classroom or sitting at home even, and they know, okay, I'm a pioneer personality. Okay, today we're going to study a pioneer. That child's ears are going to perk up just a little bit more because, oh, well, that's like me. And so I think that there's not only helpful for parents, but it's helpful for kids because now they start to see themselves in these role models because, oh, they have something in common. And then finally, the last E is execution. And I think that's where you go from learning about the different things that are the, different role models and just exploring to what can I actually take action and do? So your son is taking coding classes. That's such a great example of going from I think I want to trying it. Like I said, like if we had to get married by a specific age, we'd go on some dates first, right? So we should be doing the same thing with careers, whether that's through activities, through job shadowing, whatever that looks like for the age of your child. The last step really is just getting your hands dirty. I mean, how many kids do you know that went off to college, spent $100,000 on a career, and they have not spent one day actually doing the career? You talked about teachers who are teachers' aides, and for the first time are doing the job and realizing what it means to be a teacher. So, finding different ways, whether it's volunteering activities, even just like watching documentaries. So many of the people in my book have documentaries or autobiographies that kids can read and learn about what their life was like. Being a musician sounds like, to me, one of the most fun jobs that a person could have. Like, it's not easy, and statistically it's very hard to actually get that break. And I think it's important for kids as they grow up to see the balance of some of those, big, sexy jobs and what it actually takes to obtain them.
Yeah. And so, you kind of hit on it a little bit. I wanted to talk to you about bouncing around. And it sounds like that's a really good thing for kids to do. Exposure, right? That's sort of the E that you talked about that would fall under exposure. And then execution, like really trying it. So, a lot of times I think, and I think we do this with our kids with sports as well. You play football for 4 or 5 years and you put all this hard work into it, or you take coding classes for 4 or 5 years, or you're really into that and you get really good and knowledgeable at it. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't think I want to play football anymore. I don't think I want to do coding anymore. I'm going to try soccer, or I'm going to try this. Is that a good thing for kids to do? And at what point do you think it's like, okay, we have to make a decision, like this is, eventually you're going to have to stick with something?
It's one of the reasons that I think that starting to explore in elementary school is important, because I do think bouncing around is a good thing. Now, I sat and made a list of 200 activities that kids can do just to like try to put them into buckets of, are there certain activities that seem to fit better with certain personality types? But really the moral of the story is I was able to come up with 200 without that much, without having to like think for days and days upon it, right? So even if there's no way we can have our children try 200 activities. So I think what the personality piece of it helps do is helps parents narrow those choices more quickly, so that as their kids are bouncing around, they're bouncing around among things that make a lot of sense. So I think absolutely if we're not spending elementary and junior high school exploring the different things that make us happy, like the rest of your life, it just gets harder, right? Like in high school, you've made even more commitments. In college, now you've made financial commitments. After college, you might be starting a family and there's those commitments. And it's crazy to think, but like elementary and junior high is exactly when you should be trying coding classes, trying sports. Like those are the things that frankly help you decide, you know what? I don't know that athletics is necessarily for me, but I absolutely love sitting by myself and writing code. But says a lot about the type of thing that will probably make you happy when you go to make a living. And
Mhm.
so my hope is that it's the combination of those two things, that if you can understand certain parts of your personality and use that to kind of focus the things that you're trying, but it doesn't necessarily mean one thing. So if you have a pioneering personality, you may absolutely love junior achievement, but you also might love being the captain of the football team. And you also might love running your own small business out of your home. So there's lots of different ways that you can bring that personality to life and start to see, like, I didn't actually love running my own small business. Like there's a lot of responsibility that I don't want to take on by myself, but I did really love leading a team. So maybe that's the quality in myself that I want to become a manager or a CEO versus becoming an entrepreneur. And I
Mhm.
think high school is really the time that where guidance counselors start stepping in. If you're going to a school that has a stand-up guidance counselor, to be having those conversations around the nuances of money manager versus engineer, which on paper, if you're good at math and you like once upon a time walked into a guidance counselor, oh, you're great at math, why don't you go be an engineer? Well, just because you're good at math doesn't mean you'd actually make a great engineer. You might
Mhm.
actually make a better money manager or a statistician. There's lots of ways that you can be good at math. And I honestly, for schools where there aren't great career counselors, I think then parents really do need to become a big part of that conversation. And I was talking to a coach that helps college kids figure out how to choose their major, and she basically helps parents make sure that there's investing the right type of college education for their kids.
Mhm.
And the point she made, which stuck with me, was we wait to hire career coaches until we're like vice presidents or CEOs, and we spend tens of thousands of dollars on a career coach. We've arrived. Career coaches should show up when you're just learning to play the sport, right? So her advice to parents, which
Mhm.
I think was great, is at that high school, college level, actually consider a career coach for your kid that can have very personalized conversations about what they have been interested in over the years, as they've been trying lots of things, and help them make the right choice for what college to choose, what major to choose, and how to go about getting into that career instead of
Mhm.
waiting the 20 years to hire that coach. There are people out there that are far more affordable than executive level coaches that can work with your high school or college student. I'm happy to provide you with some names that you can put into the show notes if you'd like. But for the high school, college level kids, I think that's a great option for those that have it.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that also we're in a time now where we're really bringing to the forefront college and career.
Hmm.
So, I think, prior to the last, 5 years or so, everyone was under the impression that I have to go to college, I have to go to college. And now it's so apparent that that might not be the path for every child. Maybe they do want to open their own small
Yep.
business. Maybe they do want to partner with someone and learn from something else or learn a trade or something of that nature. So I think having those conversations with students as well, to say it's not just about what you want to do when you go to college. I think sometimes we say that to our kids. I know I have, and I've had to sort of step back from that, to say, oh, what are you going to do when you get to college? And so to them at a young age, it's almost like a given. I'm going to
Yeah.
college. And because we've said that, right? We've said, what are you going to do when you go to college? Not if.
Yeah.
I know I've said that to my kids, right? And I have one son that's 13. He's like, I don't know if college is for me. I might want to open up my own gym or open up this or start my own business. And I'm like, oh, and you kind of don't always know what to do with that
Yeah.
as a parent, or especially as an educator who, like, what? You mean you don't want to go to college? And you're like, oh no. But I think we are getting to the age that where in our society now where that is more acceptable, and that we need to start providing those resources to students as well. And it's not just about when you go to college, it's if you go to college.
And I do think that it's something that's going to become more popular for that reason. So let's use the example of your son wanting to open a gym. There's still skills. So let's say, I'm going to use my college fund to go open a gym, or even just take out a small business loan, whatever the situation is. There's still things in terms of being able to balance budget and marketing and things that are required to understand how to open a gym. Is a 4-year business degree required? Maybe not. But I think what's great about some of the coaches that are out there for high school students, or frankly guidance counselors, is they can help parents see, like, you know what, if that's really what he wants to do, maybe college isn't necessary, but what I would recommend is a year of junior college taking some business courses, or here's some great online classes they could take to be sure that before, a 19-year-old gets 50 grand in their hands to open a gym, that they've taken some of those core classes to help them, or even just a coach, that they have found a coach that they can use to help them open their business. And so I think what's great about these pre-career coaches is that parents and teachers can rely on someone to help guide the whole family into what's necessary for my child if this is what they really want to do. Is it an education? Is it understanding some core principles prior to doing it? Is it a trade school? And so what I believe in kind of jumping into this whole area is that if we can start young with kids and having a meaningful conversation. So, asking the question is fine, but then follow it up with the assistance, whether it's in the classroom or at home, to really understand what's their personality, what are the types of jobs that or role models that they can look up to, and what are the activities that correspond with doing those things, so that by the time you do get to high school, you can have a meaningful conversation around the nuances of what you want to do. And then then it makes it easier to choose an option like, okay, I'm going to take a year of community college, take some business classes, and open a gym, because you've spent so much more of your life figuring it out. For me, 20 years ago, I think so many of myself and my friends went to college the first year just looking to figure it out there, right?
Yeah.
And as it turns out, like, college is a very busy place, and I don't know that everyone figures it out there, right? So you kind of graduate and then go find the job that hires you, and next thing you know, it's 20 years later, and you're like, how did I get here?
Yeah. It's so true. And I love this so much because I just love this information. I love everything you're doing, because I can promise you that every single person listening to this knows, and it may even be them, but knows a lot of people in their life that if they looked back or talked to them about the job they're currently doing, the career that they chose, it probably isn't the job of their dreams. It's not the career that they love, and they wish that maybe they could go back and change it. And so I can guarantee you that a large majority of society feels that way. And this is partially the answer to that, is using these curriculum resources, using these types of books, using resources as yourself, career coaches, and really digging in deep with kids before they make that decision. So where can we find you? Where can the audience find your book? Where can they find you? Give us a little bit of contact information.
Absolutely. So my website is dreamitanddoitkids.com. And when you arrive, there is really 2 ways that you can utilize my site. First, the book is there and available for parents to purchase. You can use the free quiz to understand your kid's personality, so that when the book arrives, you know which stories are the best fit to maybe focus in on. There's also a section for teachers. So I used these stories to create a curriculum for the classroom that really is centered around the bulletin board. And as you read the story, you can be putting these graphics up on your bulletin board that correspond with each, with the personality types of the person, so that as you are learning more and more, the people that fall under each personality build. And then each curriculum has 5 different activities that go with it. So there's activities in terms of just reading retention, there's some self-reflection, there's activities that help you actually participate in what it's like to do that job. So for the classroom piece of it, I've added some more materials to make it easy on either homeschooling parents or on teachers to actually teach these as part of the classroom curriculum. So if you just go to the teacher section of my website, you'll be able to find all of that there. And, if obviously if anyone has any questions about any of this, I'm always available. My contact information is all up on the website, and I've really enjoyed having the opportunity to come here and talk to you about this today, because I do think that it's important, and I hope that the next generation of kids has a better chance at loving what they do for a living than I think our generation did.
And we will put all of that in the description page, as all of our listeners know. So we will make it very, very easy for you to find Holly. So if you weren't writing all this down, don't worry, don't fret, don't, pull over on the side of the road trying to get all this information. We will have it for you. And so Holly, thank you so much for not just being on the show today, but what you're doing. It's just so needed and so vital with our children today. And so thank you so very much for taking the time out to be on the show today.
It's truly my pleasure. Thank you.
And this is Christy Houle signing off for this episode of Classroom Matters. And don't forget to check out all of our new resources on the Educate.Today website.